AI, released in 2001, tells the story of David, an artificial boy designed to imprint upon human owners, to simulate a child-parent relationship, such that the mechanical child, or mecha, develops genuine feelings of love and devotion.
You are my mommy.
It's a Pinocchio story in which David is rejected by his adoptive family and must travel in search of the Blue Fairy, whom he believes can grant him the wish of being a real boy, and thus deserving of love in return for his own. The movie plays out in 3 distinct acts, and is quite long.
Then he went to bed and fell asleep. As he slept, he dreamt he saw the fairy, lovely and smiling, who gave him a kiss, saying, "Brave Pinocchio, in return for your good heart, I forgive all your past misdeeds."
The first act concerns David's adoption and eventual rejection by the Swinton family.
Mommy, no. Mommy. Mommy. Mommy, if Pinocchio became a real boy and I become a real boy, can I come home? That's just a story. It's a story. Tell us what happens. Stories are not real. None of Mommy is real.
The second has a distinctly darker tone and finds David lost in a world where mecha are mistreated, enslaved, and abused.
Are you her?
That's Our Lady of the Immaculate Heart.
With the aid of Gigolo Joe, he finally discovers the headquarters of the company that made him, and upon discovering duplicate model child mechas, David realizes he is not unique, that he's just a machine, and that it will always be so. He attempts suicide. But it is not to be, and upon obtaining Joe's craft, he descends to the submerged grounds of a theme park, where he finds the Blue Fairy at last.
Blue Fairy.
He begs her for his wish, but she's just a statue, like him, a simulacrum. There's no response, and in the depths as the lights fade, he goes on begging and wishing for what seems like an eternity. For many, this is where the film seems like it should end. On a down note, true, but at once a scathing commentary on the irresponsible nature and hubris of man, that creates AI without considering his own obligation to his creation. It's a sort of Frankenstein ending, except that David is ultimately destroyed in his futile pursuit of humanity. The adaptation of Super Toys Last All Summer Long by Brian Aldiss into the feature film AI, Artificial Intelligence, was the brainchild of Stanley Kubrick. He had hoped to produce the film and have Steven Spielberg direct. Following Kubrick's death in 1999, Spielberg, who had been reluctant, was prompted to adopt the project. As a consequence of a combination of fan resentment and misunderstanding, a frequent criticism of Spielberg's film is that the ending isn't very good. It's often said that Spielberg generally doesn't know how to end movies, and that his version is inferior to what might have been if the project were helmed by Kubrick as intended. However, not only is the ending as it stands in keeping with Kubrick's plan, but I would argue it is a suitable one. There are 2 major complaints often made about the movie as it stands. First, there's a third act, again distinct from the first 2, in which David is discovered frozen in ice by a mecha civilization in which humanity is extinct and all but forgotten, except for its almost mythical status as the original creator of mecha. David provides the hive-minded mecha a connection to history and memories of real human beings. In their compassion, they allow David the closest thing they can to grant him his one true wish. Rather than making him real, they divulge that it is possible for them to recreate Monica Swinton, David's de facto mother, but that she would only exist for a day before lapsing back into oblivion. They do so, and David has just one day of bliss. He loves Monica, and Monica loves him. It's the unsullied, guileless connection he has always longed for. They share one perfect day, and perish together at its close, peacefully drifting to sleep in each other's arms. And this is the second of the frequent complaints, that Spielberg is unable to suppress his inclination for sappy, Hollywood-style happy endings. So let's address these complaints. And I should preface this by noting I'm far from suggesting that the movie is perfect. The third act in particular does suffer from an excess of exposition, with the mecha standing in for the writer, narrating events for the viewer's benefit. But let's suppose the movie had ended with the fade-out of the Blue Fairy, with David eternally left to beg in the darkness. A particularly terrible fate, given that his attempted suicide would have left him far less cruelly alone. Every movie features a scene in which the major themes and stakes of the story are made explicit. Audiences often don't notice or pay much attention, but they're always present. In AI, this scene occurs early in the first act, where William Hurt, as Professor Hobby, proposes the construction of an artificial child who can love. The question is raised then, if humans make mecha who will love them, what obligation does that carry in terms of the owner? Will the human in the equation love the mecha back? Hobby culminates his argument by reminding those present that according to myth, God created man to love him. So here we have a sequence. God creates man, who loves him but feels abandoned by him. Man creates mecha, who loves man but feels abandoned by man. And if the movie ends at the second act close, that's it. The message is, those who create crave acknowledgement but refuse responsibility, and those who are created are neglected and suffer the sins of their creators. What does this say about humanity? About parents and children? The movie would then tell us that those who create, the parents, are motivated only by emotional neediness, and are derelict of duty towards children, and that children are doomed to crave but be refused their parents' love. They then are moved to create children of their own in search of the love their parents denied them, and in their turn neglect those offspring. Does that reflect your view of humanity? Is it even true? But look at how the third act continues this sequence. Mecha creates a simulation of man, whom he regards as his god and creator. This isn't Monica that David is spending his final day with. It's a simulation. Mecha break the tragic chain and provide their creation, artificial Monica, the love of David, who in turn receives hers. It's the only pure relationship in the story, and it redeems us all. It says that the apparent endless cycle of tragedy isn't inevitable, and that it is possible for a parent and child to share a mutual affection in which neither is victimized. As such, I believe the third act is necessary in order to properly address the questions raised in that crucial scene. Hobby believes he needs no justification to create a loving AI beyond his desire to be loved. But the truth is that this is a destructive attitude, and that there is an emotional obligation on the part of a parent towards one's child. This strikes me as perhaps less affecting, but more truthful, than the dark Blue Fairy ending. At the same time, I don't believe it is Hollywood schmaltz. In the end, David must be deceived into believing he is with his mother, when in fact she is only a simulation. She in turn exists in an involuntary state of confusion, and at the end of the day, they both die. David's death means the connection he represents to extinct humanity is also lost, forever. Mecha will go on, perhaps continuing to seek their creators, looking for that approval and affection that was never theirs. Of all human existence, and their legacy in the existence of the AI that follow, there's only one perfect day for one would-be boy.